Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Just before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the authors on this study. I'm from the University of Adelaide, but it's the cast of many from University of Adelaide, Society of Aquatic Sciences, and Uni. So our marine environments are becoming increasingly crowded spaces. When we think about activities that are occurring in them, most of us are familiar with the fishing and aquaculture industries, but increasingly we've got a range of shipping and potential port developments associated with not only agriculture, but also mining and mineral exploitation. Alongside all of these, there's a range of other activities that have the potential to impact not only the habitats, but the species that occur within them. So I'm focused here on shipping and Spencer Gulf, and some of you may ask why. There's currently 5 existing ports in this region, and they're shown here in this diagram by the green dots. Over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been proposals for 6. And those of you that paid attention to the Labor government election promises will have also noted that they proposed to build a new deepwater port in this region in the first 4 years if they were to be re-elected. Back in 2014, the SA Regional Mining and Infrastructure Plan noted that there were no ports in South Australia capable of loading Cape-sized vessels. So these are the very large vessels that can't get through the Panama Canal, but are forced to go around the Cape. And so there's none of our ports were capable of loading those vessels at jet in volumes sufficient for mining. We've also more recently seen agricultural proposals around port developments and talk about cooperatives between mining and the grains industry. And then most recently, the picture on the right is around a new proposed lake shallow harbour, and you can see the schematic diagram proposed for that, where they would take grain out to larger ships. That's a transshipping option. So Spencer Gulf's an important part of South Australia in terms of its blue or marine economy. Our marine environments there contribute significant financial resources into the state. Almost half of our seafood comes from that region, and as I've indicated, it's also a major gateway to the mineral, agricultural, mining sort of areas. But increasingly, we've got a full range of recreational activities there, a lot more ecotourism happening, and as many of you are aware, its marine ecosystems and species are of global significance. So things like our diverse seagrass beds, but also many of our iconic species. So this research was done as part of the Spencer Gulf Ecosystem Development Initiative, or Skiddy, and when we first set up this initiative back in 2011-2012, the key question we were interested in asking was how to support development of mining ventures, expansion of fishing, aquaculture and agriculture, as well as conservation and recreation needs, while simultaneously delivering on environmental, social and economic objectives. And from a range of stakeholder workshops with interested parties, the vision for that area was a thriving Spencer Gulf where progressive development could occur, community opportunity could be optimised, and the unique ecosystem could be protected and enhanced. So I'm going to focus on the work that we've done around ports and shipping. In particular, there were a series of different objectives around this work. The first was around synthesising existing information around the current activities and potential threats in that region. Having a look at the current shipping activities and making predictions around future shipping, future scenarios of shipping, and I'll focus on that part for this talk. There were also a series of risk assessments, and I'm going to focus on the threats on different habitats and adding up those threats to come up with a cumulative impact map, and then assess how future shipping may impact the region. I won't have time to go into the risk assessments around pests and pathogens or iconic and threatened species. And then finally, towards the end, I'm going to focus on some of the tools that we've developed where you can look at interactions between ports and shipping activities and other industries. And throughout the research, there's been engagement with a wide range of stakeholders. So in terms of assessing shipping activities, we've used the Automatic Identification System Ship Tracking database to look at what shipping's currently occurring in that region. And we've looked around the proposed developments to come up with scenarios around our projected shipping patterns in terms of where they're likely to go and also the numbers of ships involved. And we'll look at a proposed scenario and a peak scenario in terms of export volumes. There's also two types of ships that we consider. Vessels, which are the ones I mentioned, need to go around the Capes, and an even larger one, Vailmax ships. So the Resources Infrastructure Task Force back in 2015 suggested there were 10 potential port options for South Australia. And the three most likely ones were opening up of Whyalla, which was previously owned by Ariam, now taken over by the Gupta family group. The proposed Cape Hardy port, the proposed My Pony Point port, and both of those ports were bulk loading proposals. So just to put this in perspective, you can see Whyalla, that's an existing port that involves transshipping, so shipping material from the port out to larger ships because the Cape-sized vessels cannot get in. The Hardy proposal was for a 1.3 kilometre long jetty out into deep water, and then on the eastern side of My Pony Point is a floating storage or floating facility. The proposal that was 4 kilometres offshore. So based on the existing data, this just shows you, and you may not be able to see very clearly, the current shipping pattern. There's around 350 ships per annum that go into that region, and then under proposed and peak scenarios, it would go up to around 2,000 per annum. You'll note where the ships go, and I meant to mention in the earlier figure that was a bathymetric figure that the ships are actually constrained to these pathways because of the shallow water throughout that region, or relatively shallow water, remembering that these ships draw about 18 to 22 metres draft. So just a slight aside, I bring it back, cumulative impacts in shipping, is to start looking at the cumulative impacts using expert review and literature reviews with 38 potential threats for this region that span a diverse range of activities from climate change through fishing, pollution, and including shipping and boating. We've then used an expert elicitation process to come up with a range of risk scores for these full range of habitats, and this is just a diagram that shows you colour-coded and by size, so the larger the size of the text and the brighter the colour, the greater potential risk it is. So this is a summary for all of the 8 habitats that we looked at, but you'll notice that a number of these are global threats, where nutrient discharge might be more local threats. So using that information and the spatial maps of different activities, we've added the different layers to come up with a cumulative impact map that you can see here. The one on the left is for the benthic layers, and the one on the right is for the water column layers. So they're scaled from 0 to 1, so the red areas are the highest potential cumulative impact. And what you can see if you look at both of the figures is that most of the impacts occurring, or most of the cumulative threat, is around the coastal regions, particularly around, and I'll zoom in shortly, around the industrial centres. If you notice the one on the right, you can see some potential influence of shipping activities. So if we zoom in to Upper Spencer Gulf on your left there, and then Whyalla, Port Pirie and Port Lincoln, you can see some higher cumulative impact areas, but as a whole, these are much lower cumulative impact than what we see in international studies or studies from other areas of the world. So just to tie this back to our shipping, we've got a cumulative impact layer that's here for the current scenario. We can then add in our increase in shipping to have a look at how that may impact different areas. So we're focusing on our 3 ports, Cape Hardy, Whyalla and My Pony Point. So when we do this, focusing on the benthic layer, we see little change in overall cumulative impact for Whyalla and My Pony Point, but we see quite a large change for Cape Hardy, although the overall cumulative assessment of that region is relatively low. And that's by looking, we've done this by looking within 5 kilometres of the port what the change in overall cumulative assessment is. Yeah, okay. So the other thing we can do is look at individual activities. So in this case, I've just pulled out the prawn trawling and the intensity of prawn trawling in that bottom map, and you can see where most of the prawn trawling's focused, and then you can also assess that proposed shipping and peak shipping scenarios to see whether you're likely to find interactions with other industries that might suggest the need for trade-offs, etc. So just to summarise, by predicting the future shipping scenarios, we've been able to have a look at interactions with other activities. Our cumulative risk assessment provides a baseline assessment tool for assessing potential risks or merits of any new developments and how that might change intensity of, or how that might impact other areas. There is a need to consider multiple use in our crowded marine environments, and overall this project addresses state strategic priorities around resources, energy, as well as food. I'm running out of time, so I'll just keep going. So I just wanted to briefly mention the next phase of the Spencer Gulf work, which is funded through not only the Skiddy investors, and I'll show you who they were shortly, but also the Goyder Institute for Water Research and the Fisheries Research Development Corporation. And it's aimed around a socio-ecological assessment of ecosystems, industries and communities in the region. There's 3 components around time series of ecological, social and economic indicators. Second, around using the existing new maps of activities, threats, etc., and making them more widely available. And thirdly, an integrated status assessment. So this just shows you the funding sources, including a wide range of industries that we were able to bring together to address common issues. And thank you.